Hello, this is Leon, and I'm gonna first introduce my co-host, which is
Hello, this is Fabien.
yeah, and we're going to demonstrate now some updates in the XR Shell project, which is basically funded by NLNet, the most awesome organization in the world. Thank you very much. And without further ado, let's dive straight into our prototype, which is basically XR Shell, something, a shell which you can launch inside your headset without internet while you need it once. And then from then on, you can just run and boot a minimal Linux ISO, and you can do basically some live coding on your VR headset with yeah, all kinds of different controls. So let's share the screen. So
One thing I can also insist on is like why Shell and why Unix and Linux in general, in VR and otherwise. In my opinion, it comes from the beauty of composability. Like Linux has already a bunch of tools like Echo Hello World or uh, Cat or LS or grep or whatnot. There are so many tools that are already so powerful to manipulate text and other kind of format and content. And basically, it would be silly to reinvent the wheel when there are already such powerful both tools and concept, like let's say a Unix pipe. And I think that's also why it doesn't have to. It might feel weird, like a shell, a terminal in XR,
mhm.
and it is weird, but I think it's weird in powerful way, and that we can thus have a valuable exploration of yes, 3D object, yes, text, but in a way that we don't discard a tool that again has been used for decades now. I took the time as sorry, I'm going to. It takes a bit longer than I thought to
Mhm.
say, but it's I started to learn Unix tools and the GNU set of tools when I was a kid, and think, it's probably never going to be useful. And then decades later, on my own computer, on remote servers, when I get even like a VR headset now has Android on it, and then you can have a shell in it. Like if you use ADB, even a phone, even like locked phone, iPhones, you still have shells on it. So it feels deprecated or old and whatnot, but it's not, and it's because it's powerful. So I think that's again wanting to put back a bit of perspective before the demo is like, why do we go through such crazy hoops to manipulate text, to code, to have composability? It's because decades later, it's still a powerful way to think and manipulate information.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I guess this is also a bit of the premise. Like, why do we type stuff in the shell on our laptop, then put on our VR headset to test something, and then we put it, yeah, take it off, and we go back to our shell on the laptop? Why doesn't have a web application a shell inside? And that's basically what we're yeah, sort of doing. It's almost like a bad guy in a James Bond movie who never dies. This shell is really
A good guy, a good guy.
a good guy. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I guess I said bad guy because there's sometimes you hear people say like, I don't like the command line,
Right.
not realizing that they're actually using it many times, especially with Linux. It's just there's a whole spectrum of, using or not using it, but it's also very hard to escape.
Yes.
So what you see here, I hope you still see the cast
We don't
is.
anymore. Now we just see your face.
Oh, you see my face. Okay. How do I share this tab?
It worked a bit, and then because we saw the terminal on the right. Yeah, it's we
Okay.
just see the terminal.
So this is basically the basic shell. Um, it's in a window. So when you are in VR and you pause the immersive WebXR experience, then you can already use it like this. But you can also use it in an AR setting where basically now you would see, you know, the room, your room in pass-through mode when you are viewing
Right.
this through your headset. But inside this shell, you can basically access the HTML, which is basically responsible for this web application and this
Mhm.
terminal. So it's a very interesting way that the application loads this shell, which allows you to basically have an open window to the HTML code of this application. And you can also execute JavaScript from the terminal, which basically runs directly in the browser. So it's not some kind of slow interpreter, but like if I do, let's say, alert hello world, and I don't know if you can see this message box, but now I'm seeing a hello world message box. Maybe.
No, but I believe you.
Okay, you believe me. So there's other things too. Like if I do console log hello world, then it immediately appears in the in the console, and it says undefined because console.log doesn't return anything. If I would say, or let's go into an interactive shell. If I would say return Fabien rocks, then that would also be basically outputted. So
I would
this
have
is,
been stressed
yeah,
if there was an error there.
there was an error.
No, if Fabian Rux would have also been an error, I would have taken it very personally.
There's another rock, and then I won't end the quote. Let's see what happens. Okay, invalid or yeah. So basically, this is true. It's wrong, which is why it's true. There's also
Makes
another facility. If you have a function, let's say we create a function, window.foo is console.log Fabien rocks. Like if we have this function, or let's give it an argument, function a log Fabien plus a. We have this function. Then when I exit this interactive shell, I can also call it as a command like this. So if I do foo rocks, then you can see it basically executes. I can also create a file, and this is basically a portal to your JavaScript engine, Fabian Rocks. And so basically, I can approach this whole web application as a something which runs from a shell. So this is, I think, a very powerful way and different way of looking at web development. We could also perhaps launch JavaScript applications by just executing a file. And well, there's a couple of things more to notice is that um, so you have like profile, which is basically run during boot. So this does all kinds of things. It loads some JavaScript functions,
Mhm.
for example, in profile.js, which is also loaded at boot. It defines a function here. So now if I would call this function hello world, then now I'm seeing a message box. I think you won't see it, but this is a way how you can sort of like initialize your environment. Um, and there's also something like hooks. Like if you have a JavaScript function and you would like to maybe inspect or do something in between, then, for example, alerts, then here you can see four files, a shell script, an awk script, JavaScript, and a Lua file. Then if I make these executable, hook day alert. if I make these executable and I run alert hello, then it will run the JavaScript function hello, but it will also run those hooks.
Hmm.
So this is an interesting way to, so if you want to debug your JavaScript application, you can create a hook for a certain JavaScript function to maybe see what arguments, or you could create a hybrid application where you know you could have some user input on the terminal while debugging, or maybe maintenance. You have no idea what a VR application needs. So this is another thing. And so what I'm working on as well, which is not really working right now, is this export button here, which basically exports the whole A-frame application, including this terminal and including the state of all these files, and basically exports it to an HTML file. So you would have a self-contained version of this application, and you can send it to a friend, or you can use it as a backup. And yeah, I guess it's also something you can put on your headset's file system, and when you're in the airplane, you could open it and you can just boom, load up the VR experience with all the internal um, files being saved and embedded into the HTML file. There's a
Hmm.
library I found. It's called xhook.js, and that is a very cool. I don't know. Well, I will show it another time. But it allows basically to monitor all the fetch HTTP fetch requests
Right,
and
right.
XML HTTP requests. So it can sort of like it writes it to the HTML, and later when you load it, the HTML, then it would basically load these URLs from the HTML. It sounds a bit weird, but it's pretty smart. So sorry for this incredibly long story. So
No,
maybe
it
there's
makes
some
sense.
questions.
It makes sense, and also I've been personally doing this manually, namely like starting to load an XR experience, check what's in the console. Okay, I need this and this and this. Pack it in a file or a directory, and then put in the headset, because that's kind of the thing is, once you start to work in such an environment, um, you start to master it and it makes sense, and then if you travel, you don't have it, and it's quite frustrating, because you're used to think with it, not just about it. But yeah, if you're flying or if you go somewhere the connection isn't good, or maybe, I don't know, you did not bring everything, so it's a good habit, and if you do it a couple of times, or rather you want to be able to feel safe about it, you should have a way to automatize it. So I think having the button to do this, it's like internet should be optional. It should not be, it's not like, regardless of who you are, you're going to have connectivity problems for whatever reason. So if you can pack your things and make it optional, if you can share it with others, I mean, it's definitely valuable. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I'm also interested about the opportunities to basically create scripts or command line scripts, because these are way easier to make than GUI applications. Like if you want a quick, let's say if you're prototyping, then sometimes you just want to you just want to call a function or a temporary function, and it's so nice to be able to do that in VR. And I'm really curious about yeah, interesting new ways of debugging and developing in VR, because that's something um, I haven't been doing, and I would love to do that. Um, but yeah, I think you should also maybe try it yourself. I will put the link in the description, because I have some concerns. I noticed, for example, this is the link, that single quotes And double quotes are not easy to distinguish in VR, and maybe we need to tweak that a bit.
Yeah, to be explored.
Maybe font size or this WebXR layer, which also has downsides. What I was also thinking is that maybe at some point we could also the history of commands, which I think is called dot
Yeah.
history in your shell, could also be easy to or interesting to have that accessible via a hand menu or something, so that you can you don't necessarily have to you know sit in front of this terminal window uh, with your keyboard, but maybe be able to access your history and trigger it from your hand or something.
So I would push that a bit. Like one of my very favorite command in the terminal is Control R and then typing a bit of a command. So for people who are not used to it, it's like, for example, I have a shortcut on my mechanical keyboard that flips the screen. So my portrait becomes landscape and vice versa. But the Versa part has a bug because I changed the port of my screen, basically. And what I need to do is like switch back to portrait. And I have this in my history of my terminal. And then what if I do Control R and I type, I think, normal. So part of the string of the correct command, it's going to bring it back, and then I can do enter, and it's going to run that command again. So basically, having the history for sure, making it accessible for sure. The question is a bit like how can it be efficiently brought back? Because Control R, you need to remember a bit like what is like one keyword or part of a word in the command. But once you do, and it's in your history, like you're way more efficient. It's really such a great way. So could there be a way to efficiently access not just the history of the command that have been typed, but like the right command basically from that history specifically. So I don't I haven't done that.
Yeah. Yes.
So now I'm just sharing the window. I hope that's going to make the difference. And I also shared before the mindset behind this. So I think when we start to discuss about, let's say, reverse search and the gesture with the hand, etc., it's important. And we wanted to have the same kind of feeling of efficiency than when we were doing this with a keyboard. But a lot of the progress, in my opinion, in VR, after 6 degrees of freedom, so being able to move into space physically, not just like look around, but move, it comes from hand tracking. So you put your hands in front of your headset and the camera detects the hands, and then you can move them, and it feels like not just as onboarding the first time you put the headset, but even after, it feels quite natural or simple or direct. So I believe it's quite powerful, but still, like, we need to learn how to do this, and not everybody has the same affinities. Some people might be right-handed, left-handed. In the setup I have, one can move code or text by pinching with the right hand and execute with the left. So what I did is a new function called, this is primary tests. But what you can see is when I pinch to execute, then I switch from the left hand to the right hand and vice versa. So basically, the functions that are assigned to right, I'll let it loop, but with the right hand I move, with the left hand I pinch, and now with the left hand I move, and with the right hand I execute. So I switch back and forth. So it's the simplest meaningful example, and I think it helps in terms of accessibility, because again, some people might prefer the other way around. But the goal behind this is to have a gesture manager so that one can assign a behavior, let's say implemented with a function, to a thing, to a movement, to a gesture. So that was, let's say, the first demonstrable step for it. And to push this a bit more in terms of, let's say, flexibility, because again, now it's just switching from one hand to the other. So let me know if you can see this screen now.
Yes, I see it.
Sure. So I was thinking, okay, but how do I, beyond just switching from left to right and right to left, and how can I assign a function to a thing? I can drop it on my hand, but that can be really tricky. So I could have a ghost hand, like a copy of the, let's say, 3D model for the hand, or I can be a bit more minimalistic or simpler. And basically, my right hand has an ID, which is called right hand, very creative. And I made a visual link between the two. So if I move the identifier right hand, then it is linked with this red line to the actual right hand, to the live hand, let's say. The goal being that once I have a function, let's say switch or show wireframe of a model, whatnot, I can drop it on the ID of, let's say, body parts or gesture names, and then I see them because they are there visible as text. And if they have a link, then I also see live what it actually means. So that's the progress or the exploration, let's say, at least on Gesture Manager, and having, like, let's say, affordances to body parts that can be used for those gestures.
This is very interesting. How weird, or how weird is it to, I see this cursor in the middle. Like how weird would it be to basically have that reflect the current terminal line? So if you typed in the terminal JX, what was it? JX something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
JXR.
JX, and then a function name, that you see that in the cursor. And yeah, and then the question is how to sort of get it out there so that you can put it in the
So
environment somewhere.
what is it now? So the cursor is like you type the text with your physical keyboard, or if you have a virtual keyboard, which I implemented, you pinch with your left hand, so you can either type with a keyboard using, for example, Bluetooth, um, and it's going to type that line of code there. And if you do enter, it's going to bring that code in space. Like you can then grab it and move it around and execute with the left hand. And is going to be executed as JavaScript. So you can do whatever you want with it.
I think that's a great fit for a second um, prompt visualizer of the terminal. I think we can sort of pair those up.
Yes, that's the hope.
That's very interesting. What I find very interesting about it is that, it is already a terminal, what you are showing. uh, it's just a terminal which goes more into the direction of hand interaction. uh, but I really find it interesting to sort of uh, couple it, or sort of synchronize it with a traditional terminal as well for uh, you know tasks or things which might be more appropriate there. Very interesting. Really excited about this, where this is going. Think, um, are there downsides to using the terminal from the browser window directly? When you pause in Quest, when you pause the immersive experience, you basically get your browser window inside your
Right.
experience. Are there limitations to use it like that, or what do you
I
think?
mean, the obvious limitation is it's not spatial anymore. So it's great because you have the browser proper that is available, and you can copy paste from other pages. Like I remember a demo that I did a couple of months ago where I took a code snippet from the very code repository that I put in the chat, and that was super cool and powerful. It's like, wow, I don't have to actually type the line. I can just copy paste from while being in XR, but while being in XR-ish, like I was in VR in the headset. Yes, I did not remove the headset. Yes, but I still the web XR experience was running in the background, but there was still like the browser as overlay. So it's not exactly the same. To me, that would be the biggest drawback. It's like you're not fully living, you're not physically removing the headset, but you're still living the experience, the WebXR experience. So to me, that's the biggest drawback.
Yeah. Also, the hands are frozen, which is also a bit
Yeah.
of a weird experience. It maybe also gives the user a feeling that it's the experience is paused.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we should leave it, both enabled for now. I was just trying to get out of having to optimize the immersive experience, because it's okay, but and maybe that's also interesting to optimize it in a way that it would even work comfortably, um, on systems which don't have this browser window inside the immersive experience possibility.
Yeah, and it's honestly also in terms of optimization, my perspective is hardware is getting faster and faster. Next generation of hardware will have whatever chip on it. So a little bit of optimization, of course, if it doesn't work at all, like if it crashes, for example, sure. Otherwise, if it does work and it feels a bit slow, it's still usually good enough to see, okay, does it make sense? Like, and then eventually explore and possibly optimizing, but I don't know if it's needed because, for example, what's powerful there in the console I have now, it's just JavaScript. So that's good for me because I know JavaScript, and I think it makes sense in that context. What you do though have is a proper shell. So that's not just how it looks. It's which is why also I think it's interesting that you edited a file. Just being able to edit a file is powerful. So being able to edit a file in the terminal, it's not something that I can do. So it's a lot more than like the terminal. So I think surfacing those possibilities, let's say in the blinking console, how do you say, pointer I have, that would definitely be valuable. If it has a little of a performance hiccup because it's the full terminal, I think at least at first that's what I would suggest. And eventually, yeah, reconsider, as you mentioned, the example of being able to catch what we do with the input and do reverse search or this kind of things. But yeah.
Cool. Oh, I noticed we've already talked for almost 1.5 hour. Or no, 1 hour and 15 minutes actually. So maybe this is I have to do some cutting in the video. Anything else you want to share, or um,
Um, okay, a little bit unrelated then, as a way to say goodbye. I just received some AR glasses. Well, they say AI glasses because they are riding the wave, but the truth is it's AR glasses. And why do I show them? First, because I think it's cool, um, and because so they look a bit funky like this.
mhm,
Uh, and if I remove this, they look like normalish glasses. And
mhm.
I have here a little mirror and then a display there.
Oh, really?
And
Cool.
what's exciting about it is they're from a Brilliant lab. And if you're familiar with the monocle,
Mhm,
it's open source and open hardware. And here in front of me, when I look at you, the camera, I see a little bit like a line of text. And you can control that with Bluetooth and Web Bluetooth. So again, open hardware, open source, and what's the name? Normal interfaces, let's say Bluetooth proper. You don't need an app if you don't want one. So yeah, it's I wanted to share this first because I think it's exciting, and because it's to show when I said before, oh yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about performance because there will be yet another headset with better performance. I'm always happy to showcase example that it doesn't mean yet another headset that will be locked down. It can be something that is properly open, again, open source and open hardware, and to explore this kind of things. And I think the kind of work that they're done in XR, uh, yeah, ideally goes on entirely open stack. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
little gadget.
Amazing. That's another thing you could hook onto your terminal.
Indeed,
Can it
indeed.
display one line?
So it's a proper screen and it's 640 by I think 420 pixels. So you can display definitely a line. Well, like depends how many characters, but I would say conveniently and without having to read too much, maybe 40 characters, something like this, not 80. You can make them smaller, of course, and it's a screen proper. What I mean by that is it also has, I forgot how many colors, but it does have color, pretty sure. And if you want to display images, pictures, emoji, you can do that. It's you have. I wouldn't use it to watch a video, but I'm saying you don't have to have just three words white on a transparent background. So yeah.
That's amazing. And how do you input or like is it like a screen for your mobile phone or something or
Oh,
for
so
some?
the question of what is it for is open.
Okay, so
So I
it just needs
nobody needs
Bluetooth.
oh yeah, nobody needs this. The answer is like, what do you need it for? Well, depends on your usages. For now, to be honest, that's also why I said, I think it's healthy to consider it in terms of design principle as a display, just the same way you have your screen in front of you, except that display is much closer, yet lower resolution. So, in my opinion, what it makes sense for is like if you don't want to reach for another device, for example, have a smartwatch, e-ink, and also open hardware, open source. Maybe I don't want to look at it for whatever kind of interaction. Same, I have a phone. If I don't want to look at the phone, and then think about this for like what kind of interactions, because let's be honest, the display on even this, well, it doesn't have color, but the display on the watch is extremely readable. So, in which situation is the trade-off worthwhile? But I haven't. It's not AR proper or MR in the sense that it has no spatial information, so it shows like an overlay. Which,
Mhm.
to be honest, also to look back to the things shown earlier, I think it's interesting to consider VR as a way to prototype for devices like this. What does it feel like to have the overlay, like the cursor again, instead of being on the VR background? You can imagine this on a real world background, except it's of course like way lighter and smaller than a proper headset. But again, what's the point? I don't know yet. I
Yeah.
need to find a situation where
Mhm.
it's really like nothing else compare. And to be honest, with our screen, the screen of our phones being so good, and the phone were, but I think it's a little bit about uh, like same for programming in VR, losing our habits or forgetting our habits that they are, or highlighting that our habits are just that habits and there are other ways. But yeah, they need stepping back a bit from what we're used to do.
Yeah, I was thinking, for example, if you are a firefighter and you have all this, they have all kinds of equipment with serial
Yep.
numbers, and they have. I actually in the past, long time ago, I built a sort of like inventory program or
Hmm.
website with a database where they could basically see all kind of information and notes about certain equipment. For example, it needs to be refurbished in 2 months, and so the serial number was there, the important one. And I was just thinking about, what if you are wearing this glass and you need to use both your hands.
Yeah,
You know,
indeed.
you cannot use your phone, so you basically want to say the serial number,
Yeah.
CX5 or something. Then, would it be theoretically possible to have your smartphone listen
Yes.
to that and sort of retrieve somehow this serial number from a perhaps local database, could even be a local
Yes.
web app, and then project it. So this projection, how do you project it to the over Bluetooth? Like, what kind of interface is that?
So I'll try to show you. There is, I don't know if you can see from the camera.
Yeah, frame. Yeah, SDK.
So there was a hackathon a couple of weeks ago, and so that's a web page which connects with web Bluetooth. So if I click on connect and the glasses are on, I can pair to the glasses, and then I can type some text in the input box and then send it, and then I see the result on the glasses. And of course, that's done by typing on it to explore, but it can be programmatic. So you can clear text, add text, move the text around through a normal web page, basically. So the entire example you give, you would do the same, except that when, you, for example, you can use speech to text on the page also. When you hit a result or no result, instead of this doing a console log, for example, you would write a function that says send to glasses and that string, and then maybe the duration before clearing it or deleting it. What I don't know yet is, for example, the way to interact is usually tapping on the branch. There is
Hmm.
a sensor there. So this with JavaScript and the web page, I'm not sure how it works. I guess it's an event that you get by monitoring with Bluetooth if there is some new. Um, yeah, I'll check. I just read them 2 days ago, but yeah, that's how it probably would work. But you're right that it's also so in screens in a situation where you need the screen right there and there, and you don't necessarily want to look at another screen, and where your hands are busy, where you can't use them. And one example of that I actually went to visit a research lab here in Brussels just before the holidays, so let's say 2 months ago more or less. And they are researching not first aid, but for ER emergency response. So they were part of a hospital, and the
Hmm.
hospital has an academic hospital, VUB JET here in Brussels.
Hmm.
So they have an how do you say an ambulance, a vehicle for emergencies, fit with a bunch of technology, a bunch of screens for both the patient not to be bored. Let's say if you have a kid on it, you'll have cartoons while they were being moved to the hospital, a bunch of sensors, bunch of different things. And we were precisely discussing about the monocle and now the frame as a way to indeed, how do you get the right information? But you can't like, even when it's bad example, I shouldn't do this, but sometimes I need to check my phone when I'm cycling. I definitely don't want to do this, and sometimes I still do. And then I wear jeans and I need to put back the phone in my pocket. That's definitely not the way. So yeah, whenever it's a good design principle indeed to think about situation where you need some information, visual information, can be text or images,
Yeah.
easy, and then
Oh,
find it where
yeah.
indeed.
I just realized this web speech, or this local JavaScript speech recognition library. It could basically project what's being said on the fly to these glasses, and you
Yeah,
won't you won't even be touching your phone. You would
and
have
you can
subtitles in the
translation,
meetings.
metadata, and you can explore quite a bit with that.
Very cool. I would like subtitles in my in meetings. All right. I see your video has been turned off to save bandwidth. Maybe that's a nice way to also wrap up this update.
Yeah,
Then I will stop the video, and I would encourage everybody to keep checking the project and our next videos. Cheers.
sounds good.